Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Kageyama, and I'd like to welcome everyone here to Be Your Own Hero. I'm a stage 4 prostate, bone, and lung cancer patient's last survivor. Been dealing with cancer since late 2020, early 2021, and doing very well out here in Texas. Um, we have been enjoying just an absolutely spectacular summer, and as we move into fall, it's been really, really nice weather. I think we only had a couple of days, two or three at the most, of days over 100 degrees, and now we're like in the 80s, and so it's just been really, really nice. And I hope wherever you're at, wherever you're watching this, that you have great weather as well. And I hope, and here's your commercial. Please like, subscribe, make a comment in the comment section of the video, and help us to keep providing these videos to you because what I aim to do is to provide hope and inspiration to not only cancer patients but to anyone. It doesn't matter because life is difficult and we all need a little bit of, bit of a boost from time to time. And we have the perfect person to do that today. And her name is Casey Kang, and she's from California. So, what I'd like to do at this time is I'd like to introduce Casey. Please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are, and let's get into a great conversation.
Thank you so much, Mark, for having me here. My name is Casey Kang. I am a three-time survivor of acute lymphoblastic leukemia, and now I'm a trauma-informed cancer coach. And since we're just going to dive in, I was diagnosed in February 14th, 2014, at 31 years old with acute lymphoblastic leukemia during my quote unquote lunch break, and I didn't go back to work for 8 months after that.
Wow.
So I went right from a doctor's appointment into the ER, transferred to the hospital, and I didn't go back to work for 8 months.
So let's talk about that. So did you get a phone call at work?
No, so it was actually a follow-up appointment because I had been experiencing some things. Mind you, the timing of it was like right around the holidays. At the time, the company I worked for, our fiscal year end was in January, so it was a very stressful time in general for me. And I had at the end of December developed some nodes on my neck, and I thought it was genuinely strep throat. And I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot get sick. I gotta nip this in the butt, right? Like, but because of the holidays, like the timing of getting in to see an ENT was very complicated. So I went to an ENT and he goes, this is weird. He goes, well, let's just give you like 10 days of antibiotics. He goes, and then schedule follow up in 2 weeks. We'll see what's going on. Because he was like, yeah, you're inflamed and these you shouldn't have these nodes. And I was telling him everything that I was experiencing, like I was tired and but it was like things that you can excuse because of the holidays and nothing like looking back, it was like way worse than what it was in the moment, I suppose. So I took the 10 days of antibiotics, and literally the day I stopped was a Monday, and that my appointment was a Friday, and that's when like everything exploded in my body. I looked extremely pale. Like coworkers were like, "Are you okay?" Um, I was night sweating like profusely, like through shirts, like not normal. I was having nosebleeds, but not in the traditional sense. Like I was blowing my nose and blood was coming out. I thought like, oh, I scratched the inside of my nose. Weird. Like everything could be justified in my mind, quote unquote. And so I was having trouble breathing. I was like really tired, like extremely tired, like taking naps, like on the weekend, which wasn't really, I never took naps. And The day I went into work for my lunch appointment, I struggled to walk up the stairs without taking, like, holding onto the rail and taking a breath between each stair. I was like, whoa, something's not right. Still, again, didn't think anything was that wrong. I had bruises all over my arms. Like I was at a charity event 2 days before I was diagnosed because again, I never said no to work, and I went to reach for a glass of water and my sleeve came up and there was a giant bruise and I didn't know it was there. And so immediately my reaction was like, "Oh, cover it up. That's weird." And my boss literally calls me into her office and was like, "Is something going on?" Like she was very concerned like that somebody was like hurting me. And I was like, "I don't know what that was." I was like, "No one's hurting me, I promise you." Um, because all of these things were happening and I couldn't really figure out what was going on. And then the day of, like, I had little clusters of red dots everywhere. So there was a lot going on. So I went to this appointment thinking, like, this is a really weird reaction to, like, A, the antibiotics, or B, like, something's happening, an infection that I can't explain. Never once did it cross my mind that it was something as severe as cancer, ever. I was just like, this is a weird infection and a very weird body reaction. And so when I went to the ENT again, I was describing what was going on, and he goes, without a panic, without nothing, he goes, I think you should see an internist. So I walk over to the next building and we walk into the waiting room and it's full. And the receptionist goes, the nurse will be right out. Literally walked out as I was walking in, and they ushered me right into a waiting room, into like an exam room, not a waiting room. And that's when I was like, that's not normal. Um, and so I'm describing again everything to the internist, and he goes, let's walk around because they couldn't get a like a heart rate. They couldn't get a pulse ox because my blood pressure and everything was so low. And he's like, are you okay as we're walking around the office? And I was like, yeah, I'm tired. I don't feel good. And he goes, He goes, I really need to see like your blood work. He goes, the fastest way to do that is through the ER. And so I go, well, what would you do? And he goes, I would go through the ER. Didn't panic, didn't say anything. So obviously I went to the ER, and that's when they told my ex-husband, who happened to be there with me at the time, because I was like, I think he knew something was wrong, but I didn't. And he was like, the doctor handed him a piece of paper that said um, cancer and leukemia, and I was like, what? Like, and that's the first time I found out like it was possibly cancer, and it was. And they ambulanced me to the because I was in the suburbs of Chicago, and they ambulanced me to downtown to be admitted to the hospital, and I was there for 31 days.
So, what was going through your mind when you got that news?
Honestly, it was denial. It was like that can't be right. Like I use humor to cope, and so I said a very inappropriate joke to the doctor, who was not impressed and immediately walked away. And I genuinely was
What was the joke?
like, I'll share it. So the paper said children's cancer, and my brain just locked into children's cancer, and I was like, that's weird. Why do I have a child's cancer? And so I asked the doctor when he came back in, I said, am I going to the adult hospital or the children's hospital? Because this is a children's cancer. I'm very confused. And I was half joking, half not. And he goes, you're going to the adult hospital, like as if I like hit my head and couldn't think straight. And I said, oh, I'm just making sure because my husband can't be within 100 feet of children. And my husband at the time was just like, oh my God, I can't believe you said that out loud. And I started laughing, and the doctor just turned around and walked out. And I was like, well, I guess that didn't land. And he goes, why would you say, my husband was like, why would you say that? I go, I don't know. You're telling me I have cancer. How am I supposed to react?
That's very different from anything I've heard as far as when somebody's gotten a diagnosis. That's That's one for the books for sure.
Yeah. And actually found out later it was a legitimate question because I know friends that were in their late 20s diagnosed and went to the children's hospital. So my question, although I was joking, was kind of like a real question that needed to be answered.
Wow. So how did that hit you though, that, you know, you have cancer? How did that sit with you and what was going through your mind?
Honestly, like I was so severely sick at that time that I was just like, I don't feel good. I was managing like a lot of pain. At that point, like just my body, I think, accepted the fact that I was sick and just gave up, essentially. Um, and then I just was being ushered into so much testing, even in the ER. They were giving me X-rays. They were just running blood work. I was getting infused with blood. Like I was getting platelets. I was getting so much at once and still being ushered through CT scans, MRIs. They were doing pulmonary exams, heart, like every exam you can think of is what they were doing. And that happened in the span of from Friday to Monday. And so I didn't have time to really process what was going on. Plus, I wasn't sleeping because they were taking me away during the middle of the night. So my brain really didn't understand what was going on until my hair started to fall out. And that reality hit me very hard while I was in the hospital. And I fell to my knees in the bathroom and started sobbing. And my ex-husband knocked on the door and was like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "Yes, but no." Like, how do you answer that question when the reality of what's happening as you're staring in clumps of your hair is
So were
coming?
you going through chemo so that when that
Yeah,
happened?
they actually started chemo before they had the official results back because they were 99% sure. They just like they took before I started chemo, they did 3 bone marrow biopsies and then they immediately started me on chemotherapy without getting the results back because they just knew. My cortical bone was so compacted. So normal cortical bone looks like bloody wood. It's essentially what it looks like. Mine looked like a plastic skeleton would look, like you see in like schools. And so the doctor thought he missed twice and then pulled a third one and he was like, "I know I didn't miss on that third one." He goes either your bone is so compacted, this is how it's coming out, which means like I literally had zero red blood cells in my sacrum. He goes, "I know I didn't miss the third time." And that's how severely sick I was and I didn't know it.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So who was a part of your support group um, besides was your ex-husband supportive of you going through cancer and everything like that? Talk a little bit about that, please.
Yeah, I mean, he honestly went above and beyond what you would expect any human to do. Because 4 months into my treatment, I had a stroke and literally left me temporarily paralyzed on my left side. So I depended on him for everything and needed him for everything. It was the first time I asked for help for anything, and it was very humbling to not be able to use half of your body. And so he went above and beyond what you would anticipate any human to do. I also leaned on my dad. My dad ended up quitting his job, and he basically was able to then see me every single day because of that. And that's how he supported me. He took me, helped me to doctor's appointments, like my mother-in-law, friends, my sister-in-law, like everyone that could chip in did. My brother donated his stem cells to me. So it really took a village to get me through everything that I had been through.
Wow. And that's in a cancer journey, your support system around the patient is so important. You know, if you're fighting with the people that you would like to help you, that makes your journey so much more difficult. But if they're supporting, it really makes a huge, huge difference. So it's a great thing that you had that support. Um, you've been through so much. There's no doubt about it. You were in the hospital for a month. Uh, what I'm really curious about is, so you're going through all of this, and I'm always fascinated by relapses.
Mm.
So talk about the stretch up until your first relapse, and I understand, you know, how difficult that may be to have to change your mindset to go back into dealing with cancer at a full force a second time, let alone a third time. I mean that's crazy. So if you could talk about that, we'd really like to hear about that.
Absolutely. So as I was recovering from a stroke, I was still going through treatment because I wasn't in remission. I hadn't reached, it took me 10 months to reach remission, even from just the initial diagnosis. I just had a really aggressive, they kept telling me aggressive form of cancer, um, which now that I didn't, I tried not to Google as much as I could, but now what I know now is that if you are diagnosed as a young adult with ALL, it's almost guaranteed to come back. And I didn't know that at the time. So I finished my 18-month protocol of chemotherapy, and I only had a 7-week break. And I knew something was not right in my body, and I did not want to face the reality of going back through treatment. So I waited probably a little bit longer than I should have, and finally conceded, and I called my doctor and I said, I need blood work. She called me back within an hour of me going and getting blood work, and I was at work, and she goes, your cancer's back, you need to come to the hospital immediately. And I just walked into my boss's office and fell to the ground and started sobbing. I don't remember how I got home, still to this day, because I just blacked out. And then I went back into the hospital for for a very long time. Well, technically, so that's when my oncologist told me basically the chemotherapy is no longer working. We have an immunotherapy you can try or clinical trial. Those are my only two options. And I said, how did we get here so quickly? Because in my mind, clinical trial at the time meant that there were no other options. Like we're in critical mass. I know a lot of clinical trials are not like that now, but at that time, I was like, I'm dying. Holy moly, like that reality was starting to hit. And so
So
we did the
let me pause you right there. So the first time it hits you when you were diagnosed, you had no clue as to what's going on and everything like that. But the second time that it happened, you knew what's happening. How did it affect your mindset from the first time to the relapse?
I knew the effort that was going to have to I was going to have to muster to get through it. Because 18 months of going through it, whew, it was hard enough. And I knew it was either put your big girl pants on and face the reality and go through it again, or what are the alternatives, right? Um, and so I knew it was going to take everything to get through the second time. What I didn't know was that we were out of options. I just thought, oh my God, I have to go through this chemotherapy protocol again. Oof, that was pretty rough the first time. I'm going to have to do it again. Little did I know that that was not the trajectory that I was on. The immunotherapy that I tried was basically almost tried to kill me. It sent me into a cytokine release storm, which is where your body starts to shut down from the inside out and eats itself. So immediately, the first thing I try fails. So I'm already extremely deconditioned. I'm weak. I'm mentally exhausted already within 3 days of starting a new treatment. And they tell me we only have a clinical trial left. And at this point, I was back in the hospital. I was out for less than 24 hours on the immunotherapy, which is why I say basically I was in the hospital because I went home for like half a day and then came back because it was so bad. And I knew mentally for me, it was being in the hospital that was the hardest because you like literally have no control over anything. Like when you get food, when you're bathed, your body, your privacy, your anything, it's not your life. And that was really the toughest part about being diagnosed the second time was, wait a minute, I can't just go home. And I spent 68 days in the hospital at that point, at that time.
So how many days the second time?
So the first time was 31, the second time was 68. Then the
Wow.
then the third time was 28 days or 30 days, something like that. Total in the hospital, I spent 168 days.
Why were you in there so long?
Well, the 68 days was, well, I needed infusions pretty much every day, plus all the testing for the clinical trial. And they gave me chemotherapy. They knew it wasn't going to work, but they said they needed something to, number one, keep the cancer at bay. And then number two, they were like, well, what if it works? And I was like, it's probably not going to work. So there were a lot of reasons why they wanted to keep me in the hospital. But towards the end of that stay, I was asking them, I'm like, I will come back every single day. I need to go home. I need sleep. Because, they wake you up during the middle of the night. I'm like, I need to like be able to shower in my own house. Like, I need my bed. Like, I need things at this point. So I begged them to let me go home because I could not, mentally, I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't be in this square box because, like, my husband and everyone else that came to visit me could leave at least, get fresh air. I'm stuck in this box and I can't leave. So I feel like a prisoner, and mentally it was starting to take its toll. And so I begged them to let me go home.
And what did they say?
At first, they really didn't want to let me go. They really kicked back on that. And I said, I can't be here anymore. And that's when my ex-husband stepped in and he really advocated for me and said, like, I promise you, she will come back to every appointment she needs to be at. If we need to come back into the hospital, we will. She needs a break. Like 68 days straight, it's mentally too much seeing people die on the floor. And because the clinical trial that I was supposed to go in got shut down a week before I started because people were literally dying around me and
Mhm.
I was watching it and seeing it. So I'm like, and I knew the clinical trial was going to get shut down because number one of that, and number two, my ex-husband sat in on one of the investor meetings and they were shutting it down in the investor meeting. So we knew before the doctors came and told us that it was not going to happen. And we knew at that point, okay, well, what's next? And my doctor said, well, there's one clinical trial at another hospital, but it's full. And we can't guarantee that you'll even get on the trial. which doctors don't usually say that with clinical trials. They're usually like, well, we'll put you on the list and you'll get on it, right? So that made me think there's something about this clinical trial that they know about because it's at a neighboring hospital with doctors that work together on special cases that I wasn't going to qualify for it. And so I literally had no other treatment options. And we were like, okay, but what else is there? And they were like, there's nothing. There's nothing.
Let me ask you this, Casey. We are a long way from really discussing your whole story. Uh, would you like to come back for a part two so
You
we
know I
could?
would. You know I would. It's my journey is very long. It was very intense. It's a lot to talk about.
And these are great things for people to hear the experiences. And I am so thankful for patients and survivors who shared their journeys with me because, you know, and it doesn't matter if you learn one thing from somebody new that could help you, it can make a big, one little thing can make a huge difference. Hey, I remember what Casey said about what she went through. And, you know, that's the beauty of recollection and learning different things and talking to different people is the experiences so that things aren't as daunting and that you understand. I mean, you have shared so many incredible things with us. So I have two final questions for you.
Mm.
And don't go like that for me yet. So the first one is, what would you like to leave the audience as far as what you discussed? What would be the big takeaway? And then I have a final question for you.
Technically, two things. The first would be that the human body can endure a lot. It's your mind you have to convince to get you there. And when you think you are at your breaking point, there's another level that you didn't know you had inside of you. The second thing is that you never lose hope that something can work, even when they don't think it's going to, because you just don't know. And I'm so sorry, Mark. What was the second question?
I can give you the second question. Yeah.
Okay.
We're going to discuss in the next interview. You started a large Facebook group.
I did.
If you had a superpower
Mm.
and you had the ability to make whatever you need to make happen, how would you help make this world a better place for everyone?
I would have a survivorship program that literally helped you physically, mentally, and emotionally recover from cancer, like they do for veterans that have PTSD and other complications with serving. Because what we go through is a war in and of itself, a different kind of war, but a war nonetheless that deserves this same kind of compassion and care that others get.
Wow, that's beautiful. I love that. Casey, thank you so much for sharing your journey up to this point. And I truly look forward to uh, a part two where you share more of your story because it's a fascinating story and I learned something new every single day. And that's the beauty of actually talking to people and connecting with people. And I never thought I'd use Zoom as much as I do, but it's become my best one of my best friends.
Mhm.
I remember I started using Zoom a lot during the pandemic, like everybody else did, and I actually started my YouTube channel back in 2021,
Mhm.
and I've posted a new video every single week since I started the channel back in 2021. So at this point, I don't intend to break that,
Mhm.
uh, but it's been such an honor and a blessing to meet so many incredible people who've gone through so much and to hear all these stories of people who've gone through unbelievable things. I mean, you were in the hospital a long, long time. And the average person, I don't know, could have handled that. And so you are an amazing person, a super strong person. So thank you so much for sharing uh, your journey with everyone. And be sure to catch part two of our interview. Once again, just want to thank everyone out there for joining us here at the Be Your Own Hero. Please like, subscribe, make a comment in the comment section and make the most out of each and every day. Life is short, life is precious, and it's all up to us to make things happen. So we will see you next week on To Be Your Own Hero. Have a fantastic week, everyone.